Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it right here with us on NACTV. I'm Eoin Devereux, reporter and permanent temporary host of the Story Behind the Stories, with you as always. Appreciate you taking a little bit of time. And as you can see, going to be flying solo this week. We have a few people that are a little under the weather right now out of the office, and that's the way it is. Every winter, it seems like you get those 2 or 3 sort of periods of time where everybody gets the flu all at once there, and I guess this is the first one, the first wave of many perhaps that's going to be going around. That's why you definitely got to make sure, if you can, get your flu shot and get that looked after. I'm going to be getting mine maybe in and around this time next week, so I'll be around, more or less. But let's get into the pages of the paper, and this week's edition is a 2-section paper, 24 pages in total, and this is one of those ones where unfortunately I do wish Casper Werhan had been here for this week's edition of the show, because this B section is their footprint. It is their story that they unfortunately aren't able to tell this week. This week's edition, as you can see, is our special Remembrance Day. Each and every year we do take pride in putting together something special when it comes to Remembrance Day in and around the area, and this year is definitely no exception. In fact, there are some years where we're able to come up with ideas relatively easily. There's some years where we're still trying to figure out what story, what part of that history do we want to tell to you. This year was one of those ones where inspiration came to us about 6 months ago. And in terms of, we had some letters brought in from different individuals. And thank you very much for each and every one of those individuals that heard about it. Because we decided we want to tell the history of service of Canadian soldiers and Canadian support staff throughout the world wars and throughout the years. And we wanted to do it from their perspective. So we got letters from those individuals that told the essence of what was going on before the war, during the war, as they were coming home from the war. Mainly focused on World War II, obviously, but a little bit of background on several different portions of that time period. It is really amazing to sort of see their perspective through their eyes written on the page. Casper did a tremendous job of taking that and putting it on the page, sharing it with you. I'll give you one warning though. How do I best put this? The 1940s were a slightly different place than where we are right now. Some of the language, some of the things that are said are representative of the time. We talked about this in the office as well. Do we want to change some of the wording, or do we want to keep it as it was? And the decision was made that we were going to keep the wording as it was. This is the essence of what was going on at the time and the people of the time. So that's one of those fine lines. You don't want to wipe away all parts of history. There's some good parts and there is some bad parts. The important thing is you have to learn from it. You have to move forward from it, and that's what we did with that. But that's just a very minute part of what you're going to see in these 8 pages. Just looking here, a great thing as well was some of the pictures that we were able to get from these individuals. As you saw, the front page, Remembrance Day, Letters from Home. This is the picture of the actual individual, the actual gentleman that wrote the letter on the front page here. And when you go through the pages as well, so much work. Like, Casper did a tremendous job of taking this and visualizing it into a whole new medium here. Because these were just personal letters. There was nothing spectacular to them other than a person writing to their family, writing to their loved one, writing to their spouse, that type of thing with the essence and information. And Casper did an amazing job of putting that together. Now, Unfortunately, this doesn't do it justice. That's why you need to pick up a physical copy of the paper. You can find it anywhere in Neepawa, in the surrounding communities around Neepawa, all the way even into Brandon. We do put about 800 or so newspapers into selected businesses in the Brandon area as well. But if you're not able to get a physical copy of it, don't forget, every Friday morning, 9 a.m. Central Time, our newspaper goes live on our website, mywestman.ca. Don't forget, every Friday at 9 a.m. Central Time, mywestman.ca. This is just amazing. It really is. And I can't even, that's the thing, I can't even take any credit for it. All I did with this is we read through it for spelling errors and all that, grammatical type things, make obvious changes if we need to make obvious changes. This one is pretty much, I'll say 90% Casper, because Casper put all this together, and 10% Joel and Diane in terms of sales and the ads and whatnot and putting all that together. So this is one I think we can put up in an upper echelon. We don't like to think we're egotistical when it comes to putting something together, but we are proud of what we put together on a relatively consistent basis. There's some years where we've done Remembrance Day, Veterans Day, D-Day sort of things in the past, and we hold them in very high regard, in very much high esteem. This one here, in my personal opinion, I think is one of those ones. There's 2, 3 I can think of. There's that really are up there, and this one has to be put on that upper echelon as well. And that's why I definitely do hope that you will take a few minutes of your time to find a copy and to go through this, because quite honestly, I don't think any of us truly understand what it meant to be in the experience. It's an impossibility. We've never had to deal with it. I've never, even though I'm an older individual, I've never had to deal with it. I grew up in the 90s. Everything was sunshine and lollipops in the 90s there. So I didn't have to deal with those same situations that people who were living through the 40s had to deal with. So it is eye-opening. It is a real eye-opener. So hopefully you will get an opportunity and be able to read it and to see it for yourself. Let's go into the A section here. This one I actually had a fair bit of work I put into. So this week's edition, we shine a spotlight on a local business that has gone on to bigger and better things. This week's edition you can find new and improved. I got to admit, I'm a little proud of that little nuance. A new and improved way to get yourself new and improved is the headline. And what I was talking about is Grit Force Fitness. Try saying that 10 times quickly. Grit Force Fitness, of course, is the name of Whitey's Fitness Body Shop. They have moved into their new location. It's a story we have done in the past, within the last year, about their expansion into a new ground floor building right close to where they used to be located. They used to be located in the basement of the old co-op building right here in downtown Neepawa. They decided they needed a little bit extra space, a little bit bigger space, and they brought in a little bit of new equipment there. So it's bigger and better than ever. So I had an opportunity to speak with Sherry Hawken about that, to learn about the whole process of getting to this point in time, the reasoning behind it, the reasoning for the name change. And it's great to sort of see that these types of businesses, business in general in Neepawa, seems to be thriving. There's a lot of stories this year that we've done about new businesses opening up or new businesses going into new and bigger locations. They see a viability in the community of Neepawa that they want to be a part of and that they need to be a part of, and in a bigger way. So fantastic. As for Grit Force Fitness, I got to admit, I got a membership there. I've had a membership for quite some time, so I'm used to the old dungeon there. Just as we're recording this on Thursday the 2nd, I just went in there to the new facility for the first time Wednesday evening on November 1st, and I gotta say, it is so much more expansive. There's a little bit of space to move around with, And they do focus a lot on what we could call functional circuit training. Now that is essentially it's CrossFit, but we can't say CrossFit because CrossFit is a brand like Xerox or Kleenex. So they've got a certain trademark. So look at it this way. If you're into sports, UFC is a brand, but mixed martial arts is the sport. And they do a lot of circuit functional training, which would be the MMA in this analogy. And there's that huge wide space they got there. Me, I'm a little bit older. My bones, my joints and ligaments maybe don't move as quickly as they used to, so I just stay focused on the weight portion of it over on the other side. But they still got a great selection there and some new equipment in there as well, which I do appreciate. Like I said, I'm not 20 years old anymore where you're just going to pick up a free weight and just throw it around. I need a little bit of support, some cables and pulleys and whatnot to be able to do the same thing. But it's great to see that they've moved forward with this. Now, if you want, you can see a few pictures. It is on page 1 of this week's edition of the Banner Press. And the story proper itself, you can find inside the pages of the newspaper. That's on page A14 of this week's edition. One other picture just showing some of the new branding that they have for the business, as well as the story I got from Sherry. So take a few minutes there and learn a little bit about that. We got so many other things in this week's paper. I got to admit, the last couple of weeks has been pretty good in terms of my contacts and people I've been trying to get in touch with actually getting back to me. That's nice. You always want to have 3, 4, 5, 6, as many stories as you can in there, because the most important part of a newspaper is the new. You want to be able to talk about things that people in the community are talking about in the moment. Like this, for example, Grit Force Fitness is one of those things people are talking about in the moment. And one other thing a lot of people are talking about is the LPN training facility, the Licensed Practical Nurses building, that course that's going to be being put on by Assiniboine Community College in the old police building. If you've driven by there, you've seen the interior is really coming together, and I'm sure you've thought, I wonder what it looks like on the inside. This week, you have the opportunity to find out for yourself. A couple days ago, Town of Neepawa put out on their social media several pictures of the interior work that is going on right now for that building. That course will be starting up, of course, in January of 2024. So it's coming along very nicely. It is on track to make sure that it is open. It has to be. It has to be open on time. This is not one of those things where, a town can say we're going to open at this time or we're going to have this work done by this time, and then a year later it's like, okay, now we're going to get it done. No, this is a hard and fast deadline where it has to be ready for these students, these instructors from ACC who are going to be coming to Neepawa and putting on this very important program. So it's really nice. The interesting thing as well is I didn't use any of these pictures because they were already out of date by the time the town of Neepawa put them in. But I got an opportunity about a week, maybe 10 days earlier, to go inside and get some pictures as well. And I'd never actually been inside the old RCMP building. I said that to someone a couple of days ago, and they were genuinely surprised. I didn't quite know how to take that. What are you implying here? No, I never had any reason to have to go in there. Any interactions I've had with the RCMP mainly have been over the phone in terms of getting information on stories or tracking down details. So I'd never been inside and seen with my own eyes what the building looked like. So I have no starting point to know how much it's changed. But just one thing that struck me, it was the sheer size of the building. When you look at it from the outside, it doesn't look that big. Even with the expansion that they've put on for this ACC program, it never looked like it was that large of a space. So I was genuinely surprised by the sheer width and scope and length each and every one of these rooms had. So That was very impressive to me. They've done a lot of work in there, retrofitting, because there's going to be a lot of new electronics that they're going to need in there. The interesting thing about this course is, in essence, one of their rooms is going to be a mock hospital. That same setup where you have the beds, the equipment, everything in there. So you go right from the classroom, instead of having to go to the hospital and do your sort of technical training there, taking up some space, you're able to do it in the building yourself with all the equipment, as it is in not just our hospitals, but any hospital in Manitoba. So that's a very important thing. It's going to be very interesting to see, once the equipment gets in there, how it sort of makes the reality of it sort of set in for not just for us, but obviously for the students as well. And we're very much looking forward to being able to do that. And you're going to be able to find that information in an upcoming edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. I'd imagine in and around mid-January or so, once they officially have the ribbon cutting and they start the course. I'm sure we're going to be able to get in there and get a few pictures of ourselves. So wonderful to see. All right, let's shift a little further down the street here. We're talking about a new building just now in Neepawa, a new and improved building. But now we're going to go down the road to an older building, older than me, it's that old, the Yellowhead Center, a volunteer-run facility, one of the few volunteer-run arenas in all of Western Canada. I mean, most people still to this day are genuinely surprised when I tell them that it's not operated by the town proper. It's operated by volunteers who take the time out of their days and do what they can to put this whole thing together. So it's quite an experience to be part of that board. Well, those members of that board recently got together. They had their annual general meeting, and they talked mainly about some of the financial aspects that it takes to be able to run a building the size and scope of the Yellowhead Center. And fortunately, this year we can talk with some relatively positive numbers about what's going on with it. This year, the cost of running the building was $575,950. That's not bad. That's not bad. You go to some other communities, larger communities, and the prices for running the arena and all that are in around $750,000, even up to $1 million. So we're not there just yet. With the way of inflation is nowadays, we'll probably be there soon. But the actual cost, or the actual revenue that they were able to bring in last year, was $589,796. Now, no need to get out the calculator, get out your phone and start doing the math. I'll give you the number right now. That brought in a positive net income for them this year of $13,846. Now, they are a nonprofit, so any money that is brought in is just put right back into the facility itself. Nobody's getting a check cut. They're not distributing out checks to anybody for this. It's very important still that you run a business or run an organization or run a facility that is in the black as opposed to in the red. I went through last year's story. Last year they lost a little bit of money. There have been other years where they've lost a decent amount of money. Obviously, during COVID-19, that turned into a situation that could have honestly meant the end of the Yellowhead Center. There was a lot of facilities, a lot of buildings, and a lot of organizations during that 2+ years that ran into those issues and are no more. Yellowhead, fortunately, is run by individuals who see the value in the community and definitely do anything and everything they can to make sure that it remains viable. Because let's be honest, we've done stories recently about the new arena in Minnedosa, beautiful facility. Just last weekend, I went and saw a game there, exhibition game between the Minnedosa Bombers and the Neepawa Farmers. You can find the details in last week's edition of the Banner Press. And it's a beautiful building. It really is. And for the cost, was just under $10 million to build from the ground up, right from scratch. They did an amazing job making those dollars stretch so much more than I thought feasible. But let's be honest, Neepawa can't do that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because they're putting their resources into water and sewer. They've done expansions over the last few years in the old portions of town because those water and sewer needed to be replaced. It was just time. And then they did the expansion on the former CN property, putting in water and sewer over there. And now they're doing it over by the new hospital, because the plan is, hopefully, to have new residential housing in that area within maybe the next 5 years, maybe the next 10 years, who knows? I'm not a real estate developer. I don't know what the game plan is right now. They'll let me know, and I'll let you know once we know what's what on that. But that's very important. Even though we would love to have a shiny new arena, I'd rather have running water and running sewer in the grand scheme of things, if I'm being honest with you, because we don't really think about those things until they don't work. So I'm very glad that means that we're able to make do with a 50-year-old facility. The Yellowhead Center is about 51 years old in and around, but they're still making new advances into it. They're doing the maintenance, the upkeep. One of the big items this year in terms of an expense was upgrades to the shower area up on the second level where all those dressing rooms are. That was a big increase year over year in terms of their costs. Fortunately, though, it was factored in because they made a decent profit of just under $50,000 this year. Pardon me, that they wouldn't have had any normal year. And that was because they hosted the Men's Viterra Curling Championships earlier this year. Once all the bills were paid, once everything was looked after, they were able to bring in just under $50,000 that went into the coffers. So wonderful to see. It's that back and forth. Some years you're going to have major special events, and that's going to bring in some extra cash. Some years you're going to have to do major upgrades to like the showers, to like the dressing rooms like that. And that's going to cost you a fair amount of money. It's the yin and the yang of operating a facility like that. Next year, we're not going to have the Viterra. But again, next year, we're not going to have to upgrade those shower facilities because it's done. It's looked after for the next decade or beyond. So I had a chance to speak with Wayne Jacobson about that. He's the board president for the Yellowhead Center, and he talked about that. He said, you know what? Every year brings something just a little bit different. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. This year, fortunately, it happens to be good. Maybe next year it happens to be bad. Who knows? That's what the next 365 days is going to bring us. So if you want to learn a little bit about it, definitely check it out. As I said, it's in the A section of this week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. I got to refresh my memory. It's on page A9. It's a 16-page section in the A and an 8-page section in the B, so 24 pages in total. A little bit bigger than what we usually do. We're usually relatively consistent with a 20-page paper, but this week it's a little bit extra for you, and much definitely worth it. Those extra 4 pages got a lot of value in them. We're coming up near the end of the show here, and just going to talk a little bit about one of the tenants for the Yellowhead Center and a special thing they're going to be doing for Remembrance Day. Of course, as you can see, Remembrance Day is coming up here. Hopefully you have supported your local Legion in some way, shape, or form. A little bit of change in the boxes there for the poppies, always appreciated. If you want to go out and support them by attending the Remembrance Day ceremonies, of course that'll be happening on November 11th, as always. Going to be occurring at the Yellowhead Hall. And a little later in the day, the Neepawa Titans, they don't usually have a game on Remembrance Day, but this year they do, and it's a home game. They will be hosting the Dauphin Kings at the Yellowhead Center, and they decided they want to do something just a little bit personal for the local Legion. So they're going to be wearing these specialty jerseys, these special one-off jerseys to commemorate Remembrance Day, and for all those individuals who served in the military or served to support the military in their own way. Now, I've seen a mock-up of what the jerseys are, and in the story you can find a description of what it is, but we don't have a picture of it. That's it. That's a little tease for you right there. If you want to see what they look like, maybe you're going to have to go down to the Yellowhead on November 11th and buy yourself a ticket and see them live for yourself. I've seen the pictures and I am impressed with them. You know, it's, I don't want to give away too much. Like I said, there's a description I have in this week's paper about what they look like. So if you have an imagination, you can envision it for yourself. But I'm looking forward to seeing how it looks out on ice, like the full equipment, all the gear, helmet, the shoulder pads, the whole 9 yards. Probably be quite an intimidating look for the Dauphin Kings to be standing across from. Now don't forget, it is occurring on November 11th at the Yellowhead Center. If you can't be there live, don't forget, they always rebroadcast the games right here on NAC TV. That's why you got to check your local listings for times and dates, and keep an eye out for the November 11th game between the Neepawa Titans and the Dauphin Kings. So if you can't get down to the Yellowhead Center and see it for yourself, you'll be at least able to see it on NAC TV. There's so much more stuff we could be talking about today, but there's only so much time. But I'll just run you through a couple things really quickly. We have, as usual, our looking back. We also have Ken Waddell. He talks about his usual columns. We got an opinion piece, Rick Sparling. He sent us something, a little bit of a story back in September about Neepawa having the first Little League team in Manitoba. And he's been able to follow up with us this week. You can find it on page A5 of this week's paper, where he talks a little bit more, goes into a little bit more elaborates about what was going on with that. That first one Rick sent us was the September 8th edition of the Banner Press. So if you don't have a copy of that readily handy, you can always go to mywestman.ca and just click through the pages there, and you'll, 2 or 3 pages back, you should be able to find that September 8th edition, and you can sort of re-educate yourself on what Rick was talking about there. We always do appreciate when he sends us that type of information, things I didn't know about. So many other things, obviously. Tiger Hills Hockey League has started their regular season last weekend. I got a little bit of coverage on not just the Farmers, but the Minnesota Bombers, Carberry Plainsmen, and the Gladstone Lakers. We try and be a regional paper, try and hit every little town that supports us. We try to support them. As well, the Neepawa Tigers hockey team had their annual Slasher Showdown event at the Yellowhead Center. Was able to get a couple pictures from that and a little bit of information so you can find out how your local hockey team and high school division was able to do with their own tournament. And just one other thing as well. I'm going to put a little bit of a spotlight on this. We got an ad from the town of Neepawa about a radon seminar that's going to be happening online. If you'd like to get a free radon kit as well, if you participate, you can be signed up for one of 100 radon kits. I also did up a story. You can find that on page A13, just explaining the importance of doing things like that when it comes to radon testing. Because this time of year, with spring forward, fall back, daylight savings time, sometimes you check the fire alarms, but you don't check radon detectors. Or maybe you don't even have a radon detector. It's very important you think about those things, because it can be quite a dangerous situation if you let it sort of fester in your home. So that's pretty much it for us today. So many other things, like I said, we could talk about, but that's why you got to pick up a copy of the paper. Of course, you can find it anywhere in Neepawa and surrounding communities. If you have any story ideas for us as well, we always do appreciate that. You can give us a call at 476-3401. That's the number you can reach us at, or via email at news@neepawabanner.com. So once again, as always, I'm Eoin Devereux. Thank you very much for tuning in and spending a little bit of time with the stories behind the stories right here on NAC TV.